follow up on Morgan's here. So this is always a hotly contested issue. So in Morgan's situation, the police refused to get involved, claiming it's a civil matter. Well, they're correct in saying it's a civil matter. That's why in, say, a temporary order or something like that, you put the language in there that the police are ordered to help enforce it. Whether a judge signs it or not, or agrees with it, or X's it out, may or may not happen, but you have to at least try. In Kansas, what is I'll let you go first here. In Kansas, when you're having these disputes, what's kind of the default for law enforcement?
So typically on an initial exchange, in a divorce or in a paternity action, in the initial exchange, when I guess temperatures are hot, we put the law enforcement assistance in the exchange in the temporary orders, at least on the initial one, and they get followed. After that, after I guess custody and parenting time is established in that temporary order, or even in the final order thereafter, typically what occurs is they will say that it's a civil matter. They'll write up a report, and then we will file a contempt action. So if mom withholds from dad will call me and he'll say, mom is withholding. I don't know what to do. I'll say, wait till Monday morning, because it's typically on a weekend. Wait till Monday morning. We'll file a contempt, and we'll notice it up for hearing after that. And typically what comes after that contempt action is piggyback with a motion to modify custody, because in a motion to modify custody, you have to show a material change in circumstances in Kansas. And that material change can be based on the failure to co-parent and the basically the alienation of the other party. And those are two very important factors in Kansas in the best interest standard. So we would use those. So there'd be a contempt and a motion to modify custody.
Yeah, I think the document in California, I'm ironically enough, I have several, probably half a dozen law enforcement clients. And so I've had the conversation about what's the training, what's the teaching. And I represent a few men who are pretty high up in police departments, sheriff's departments out here. And so I asked them, I'm like, so what's the training? What are you guys told to do? And I was talking to a client who's a sergeant in a police department here in Southern California. And so this is someone who's getting direct orders. Like, he knows exactly what the policy is and what the policy is going to be. And one of the realities we have to deal with is that he just says, honestly, until I ended up in this situation, I just assumed all the guys were just deadbeats. They were just screwing with the mother of their children, and I didn't take it seriously. So out here, there's one of those things where I always warn guys. I say, if you withhold the child, if you do something, the police are infinitely more likely to get involved than if you run to the police and say she's withholding the child,
Absolutely.
even if you're waiving a court order.
Yes, absolutely.
I had a client, and just like in California, in Texas, in Missouri, like a lot of these states, there are statutes for interference with parenting time. I've only seen it enforced one time, and it was a client of mine prior to me representing him, and he documented it, and he provided literally what were weekly updates to the district attorney's office until they filed a case. Once they filed a case, it was open and closed. There was no way. Her attorney basically had her plead out. They agreed to do half of the charges and plead out immediately. It was open and closed. But you have to realize that anybody who operates outside of family court may not understand the dynamic. And police officers in some areas spend as much as 70% of their time on domestic disputes.
I can tell you that the domestic issues around here, they are constantly making domestic battery calls, interference with child custody issues. I mean, they're constantly on call. And honestly, we talked about judges being human. Law enforcement officers are human too. They've probably got their own problems at home. They don't want to deal with somebody else's child custody problems when they might be dealing with their own. So they can kind of have blinders on in that situation.